Good morning, everyone. Sorry for a little bit of a delay. We were having some technical difficulties, but we're up and running, and I'm so excited to join you for another day of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and we get to talk about one of my favorite habitats today. We've got a picture of it right here. This is a tide pool. Now, you might be familiar with this habitat, especially if you live here in Southern California. This is one of our local habitats, and it's a really cool habitat because it's really easy to go visit. So if you're not from here, this is a tidal habitat. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk very briefly about what this habitat is, and then we're going to play a game of I Spy. So we're going to be exploring what animals we can find or we can spy living in this habitat. Now, while we're exploring today, if you spy an animal that you want to talk about, or if you find you have any questions about the animals, or you just want to say hi or share your observations, we have this text line that you can reach us at. I've got my friend Stewie, and he's controlling everything you see here. And if you text us at 562-286-1838, he'll take your questions or your observations or the animals you spy, and he'll pass them on to me, and we can really talk about what it is that you would like to talk about. Now, this text line is if you're watching live. So you're watching today at 9:10 on May 8th, Monday, May 8th. But if you're watching after the fact, we would still like to hear from you. But we're going to ask if you email us at live@lbaop.org. All right, everyone, are you ready to get started? So I said to start with, we're going to go over what a tidal habitat is. So I'm going to step off and take a look at this picture. This is a picture of a tide pool. Now, let's make some observations. What do you notice in this habitat or this home for animals? You can see what different things make up where these animals live. Now, one thing I notice, I wonder if you notice too, is I see a lot of water. You agree? Yeah, so this is an ocean habitat. But what's neat about this habitat is it's right along the coast or the shore. And that's where we get all these big rocks we see here. Now, what happens is the waves from the ocean come crashing over these rocks. And then when the waves go back out into the open ocean, the water gets caught in these spaces in the rocks, leaving a pool. And that's where we're going to find lots of animals. Now, I'm going to come over to my document camera really quick, and I'm going to draw a really quick tide pool just to kind of explain our tide pool really quickly. And then we're going to keep track of the animals we find. I'm going to draw them as well. So here, we've got like a rocky coastline. So these are all the rocks. And what happened is there's the ocean. So there's some water. And this is what we would call a high tide. And we call it a high tide because this water is covering all the rocks. So there's all this space here, and there's lots of animals who might live under the water here or in the rocks here. But the tide, that water level, it changes. And it changes a couple times a day. So 2 times a day we have this high tide, and then 2 times a day we have what we call low tide. And as you can imagine, when it's low tide, this water line, it doesn't go up higher because we're already at high tide. It goes lower. So a couple hours after our high tide, we get our low tide, where the water level is down here. A little bit. And as that water went back out, it gets caught in all these little spaces in the rock. And those are the pools where we find lots of animals. And so it's really cool to go explore a tide pool at low tide because there's going to be lots of animals that we can see. Now, I'm going to have Stewie put us into one of our tide pool habitats here at the aquarium. So that picture we were looking at before, that was out in the natural habitat. But here at the aquarium, we have a couple habitats that are built to look like tide pools. And this is one of them. And we can take a look and see what animals that we can spy, and we can start to explore who live in this rocky habitat. So let's take a moment. We'll put up that text line again. And let's see, what animals do you spy living in this habitat? Now, other things we can think about when we're looking for what we can see or what we can spy, you might notice some colors. Do you spy any colors that you recognize? Do you spy any shapes that stand out to you? There's lots of things that we can explore, lots of things we can observe and look at when we're watching this habitat. And we'll pick out some of the animals that we spy, and we'll go a little bit deeper exploring them. So I'm going to give about 30, maybe 15, 30 seconds and see what animals that it is that you spy, and then we'll talk about those animals that live in this habitat. Now, while you're observing, I want to tell you a little bit why this is one of my favorite habitats. It's one of my favorite habitats because I think it's so easy for us to go explore. You don't need any extra gear. It's not like you're going snorkeling or scuba diving where you need all this gear and you need training and certification. A lot of tide pools along our coast here in Southern California, you can walk right out to them. Now, it's good to have a good sturdy pair of shoes and a hat and sunscreen and all those things when you're going exploring outside, but you can walk right from a lot of beaches onto this rocky area and explore these tide pools, see a lot of these animals in their natural habitat, and it makes it a little bit more accessible. And when you go at low tides, you can find some really cool things. What do you see here? Now, the first thing that I noticed, I noticed a lot of colors. And I noticed these animals that have this really cool shape. They look like stars. Did you see anything that looks like a star? Now, they're kind of draped in all sort of shapes and directions here, but I noticed a star right here, an orange one. This is actually a star right here, too. Here, 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 and here, lots of stars. So sea stars are probably one of the most popular animals that we find in a tide pool. So I spy some sea stars. Now let's take a closer look at a picture of a sea star and explore a little bit more about these animals, because sea stars, they don't look like they do much. They just kind of sit there in their star shape, but they are actually really fascinating animals. So this other look at a tide pool, we've got a sea star right here, an orange sea star. And then we've got some sort of reddish, maroonish sea stars right here. Now, this type of sea star we're looking at, they are called ochre stars, and they're one of our local species here in Southern California. And then, I just spotted, we've got another sea star right down here, and this one is called a bat star. So there's lots of different types of sea stars. Now, these ochre stars, this one right here, and this one right here, one of the ways to recognize or identify the ochre star is these little white spots all over the body. Those little polka dots. Now it looks like it's just coloring on polka dots, but those are actually really teeny tiny pinchers. Now they're not pinchers, they're not strong enough or big enough to hurt us. So if you go to a tide pool, as long as you're being gentle, you can touch these sea stars. We have them here at the Aquarium for you to touch. But those tiny pinchers, ooh, zoomed in. Those tiny pinchers can be used to catch little pieces of food or to kind of push things off. If something lands, like little floating plankton lands on our sea star, they can pinch them and kind of move them off their body if they don't want them there. So that's something really cool is these sea stars have tiny little pinchers on their body. Now, these sea stars, they are living in a tidepool habitat, and this habitat is really cool. As I said, it's easy for us to go explore, but for these animals, it's actually a really tough place to live. And that's because of a lot of things. But one of the big things is that those waves, that wave action. So those waves are constantly crashing onto the rocks. Now, if you think about an animal getting hit by waves over and over and over, needs to find a way to stay safe and hold onto the rocks really tight. And those sea stars, they have thousands of little waves that they hold on to the rocks. So let's see if we can take a look at the underside of a sea star. Aha! What do you spy on this sea star? I spy what look like kind of more polka dots all along the arms. Here, here, and here, and here. And these are what we call their tube feet. Now, it's not 2 feet, it's tube feet. But they're basically suction cups. They're sticky feet that allow the sea star to hold on. And so sea stars have hundreds, or for larger sea stars, can have thousands and thousands of these suction cups or these sticky feet that they use to hold. Oh, here we go. There are thousands. This one is our sunflower star. And they can have about 23, 25 arms, and all of those arms are covered in these sticky feet. Now, they remind me of macaroni noodles, like if you're going to eat mac and cheese, but they're kind of tubes like that macaroni noodle, and they'll fill with water, and then they'll create a seal against a hard surface. And so they can use them to hold on, and they also use them to move. So they'll fill one tube, create a seal, and then they'll fill the next one, and they'll pull this one back, and then they'll fill the next one, and that helps them to move around their habitat. So not only do their suction cup feet, got a good video, their suction cup feet help them hold on so that they don't get tossed into the open ocean if there's a big wave, but it also helps them move. Now, it doesn't stop there, what their feet do, because these suction cup feet serve a lot of purposes. So not only holding on, but moving, but those feet actually have smell sensors. Heard that right. So it's basically like their nose is on their feet. Now, when we're smelling for things like our food, we use our nose. Not But sea stars, they're able to smell using these suction cup feet. And so whenever they're kind of walking along, they're sniffing around for their favorite food. Now, what do you think their favorite food might be? Macaroni and cheese, like I mentioned before? Just plain, that's my favorite food. Sea stars, they don't eat human food. Although, some people do like to eat what sea stars like to eat. I'm going to grab the shell of what a sea star might like to eat. Put it on my document camera. Does this look familiar to anyone? We'll zoom in a little bit. Just a little. So this is a mussel. Now this animal, when it's alive in its natural habitat, it's going to have two shells. So one that looks like this, and another one on the other side that looks exactly the same. And inside is a really squishy animal, and that is what a sea star likes to eat. Now here at the aquarium, we'll feed our sea stars shrimp and pieces of fish and other clams, and they'll eat all those things in their natural habitat if they can find them. But especially those ochre stars, one of their favorite foods are these mussels. Now, that sea star didn't have any teeth, right? So think about eating this hard thing. How might they be able to eat that? And this is where sea stars continue to get even cooler, is the way that they eat. So the way that a sea star eats is they are going to use their feet to smell for their food. So they're crawling along and they're sniffing and they're smelling for their food. And then they get to this mussel clam. Now they don't, or this mussel, they don't want to eat the shell of the mussel or the clam. They want that squishy thing on the inside. So the first thing is they have to get it open. And so what they do is they use all those sticky suction cup feet. They're going to basically give their food a hug, and then they're going to pry it open. So they're going to pull really, really hard, and they're going to open up this shell just a little bit. They don't need it fully open. They just need it open a little bit. And then they take their stomach and they actually spit their stomach out of their body. You heard that, right? They take their stomach, they pull it up out of their mouth, and they basically put their stomach into those two shells, and their stomach has acid in it. Now, that sounds kind of alarming, but our stomach also has acid in it, and that helps break down our food. So once their stomach is in the shell of that mussel, they're going to break down that mussel, basically becomes a mussel soup, and then they pull their stomach back into their body, and they're able to digest it. So to eat, a sea star has to remove their stomach from their body, put it into their food, make a soup out of the food, and then slurp it back into their body. Pretty cool, right? I think we have a picture of a sea star with their stomach hanging out a little bit. See if Sue can find that for us. Here we go. So take a look. Now this is a really cool sea star. This one is called a chocolate chip sea star. And you can't see it, but on the other side of its body, it's got all these little brown spots that kind of look like chocolate chips. But we're looking at the underside. You can see their suction cup feet. And then here in the middle, this mess right here is their stomach trying to digest some food. So a lot of times when a sea star is eating, we can't see their stomach. We don't really see them eat their food because they've got their arms wrapped all around it and they kind of keep it hidden beneath them. But that is how a sea star is going to eat. They take their stomach out, they put it into their food, they make a soup out of it, and then slurp it back into their body. Pretty fascinating, huh? All right, I'm going to go back to my drawing really quick, and I'm just going to draw a quick sea star so that we can keep track of what we have spotted in our I Spy game. So I'm going to draw it up here. I'm going to draw a sea star that kind of looks like that ochre star, and then I'm going to use my red and black. And then we'll label it. All right, let's go back to any of our tide pool pictures here at the aquarium and see what other animals we can spot. So this is also here at the aquarium. And we see lots of sea stars here. We see even more different types of sea stars. I wonder what other animals we can spot. You know, this one caught my eye because I can see a little bit of movement, is this animal right here. Did you spy this one? There's one that looks similar right here, and one that looks similar right here, and all these over here. And then even this one is the same, and so is this right here. Did you spy those animals? Does anyone know what those animals are called? Now, they kind of look like flowers or plants, and sometimes we'll call them plant-like animals, but they are actually alive animals. Those are our sea anemones. So I spy a bunch of sea anemones. Now, let's see if we can take a closer look at a sea anemone. Excellent. So here is what a sea anemone looks like up close. And these are really interesting animals too. Now, unlike the sea stars that shaped like a star and are pretty flat to the rocks, our anemones, they can be pretty tall coming up off a rock. Now, they're going to hold on to a rock just like the sea star wants to hold on because they're also living in this tide pool. And if those waves come crashing over them, they need to find a way to hold on. Now, some sea stars, they're going to use a giant suction cup, similar to the way that a sea star uses a suction cup. And some of the anemones, they basically glue themselves or just attach themselves really tightly to a rock. But instead of being flat like a sea star, their body can be pretty tall. And so they're going to move with the water. And because their body is so soft and squishy, and something special about a lot of types of animals is they have no bones in their body. So even though a sea star might be really hard, there are no bones in their body. They're what we call an invertebrate, an animal with no backbone. The anemones, as you can see here, they have no bones, and so they're able to move or sway with the water. So even though they're not flat like the sea stars, they kind of stick up. They will move with the ocean current or with the waves, and that keeps them safe, doesn't hurt their body as they're kind of being tossed around in the ocean. So take a look at all of these stringy things here on the anemone. Any idea what those things are for? Now, you may be familiar with anemones, or you might be more familiar with a cousin of the anemone. So the anemone's cousin is a jellyfish. Now, I bet you all know a jellyfish. This one is called a Pacific sea nettle, and I bet you all know how these animals stay safe and catch their food. What do jellies do to protect themselves? That's right, they can sting. So these red tentacles that you see coming down here along the outside of our jelly, those have stinging cells in them. And a jelly will use those stinging cells to catch their food. So if their food is drifting through the water and it drifts into the jelly can catch it and then bring the food up into their mouth. Now the anemone, if we go back to the anemone, they are very similar and they have stinging cells in their tentacles too. So we've got some anemones here, and we've got this big one here in the middle, and all of these noodly looking things, those have stinging cells in them. Now, the anemone is not chasing after their food, right? They stuck themselves to a rock. They don't want to move too much. But as they're kind of swaying in the water, there's going to be things that are going to drift into them. And I mentioned before that we call them plant-like animals. So a small fish might think, oh, that just looks like a plant. I'm going to swim right through. And instead of it being a plant that they can swim right through, that anemone is going to use their stinging tentacles to catch their food and then bring it into their mouth, right here in the middle. Now, when you go to the tide pools, you can safely touch these anemones. And we have them here at the aquarium to touch as well. You might think, Sarah, you just said they have stinging tentacles. I don't want to touch that. Their stingers aren't that strong. Now, for a fish that has a really thin layer of scales, they might be able to sting, the anemone will be able to sting the fish because that layer of scales is not very thick. But us humans, we have really thick skin, and the sting isn't that strong, and so we can safely touch them. But if you've ever touched an anemone before, you'll know they feel kind of sticky, and that's their stinging tentacles kind of firing into action and seeing, are you food? Are you something I want to eat? Or you're not harming me at all, you're just. So that is our sea anemone. So let's go over to our drawing really quickly. And I'm going to draw sea anemone. So I'm going to draw that kind of stalk of their body, down here, and then the middle, here's their mouth, and then all of those squiggly stinging tentacles. And they have a lot of them. And then, right, anemone. Excellent. All right, we have maybe time for one more animal to explore. So let's go back to one of our tide pools. Excellent. Now, what other animals do you spy? Now, one thing I do want to point out, because it's kind of cool, I just noticed, is you might have noticed or spied some shells. There's a shell right here, there's more shells over here, and there's two shells and they're open, and there's nothing inside. And those were fed to our sea stars. So the sea stars opened those shells, they digested and pulled out the animal that lives on the inside and left behind those shells. So we spied some shells. But one more thing that I spy, and it's one of my favorite animals in the tide pool, I like these squishier and slimier animals. I think those are more fun to catch. And I spied one of those squishy, slimy animals living here in the tide pool. And you may not even realize it's an animal, but it's this thing right here. Did you notice that? It doesn't look like much. Kind of looks like a lump, but that is actually a living animal called a sea cucumber. Excellent. So here's a picture of a sea cucumber. Kind of looks like a worm, but it's pretty thick. They're kind of are about this big. Well, they can be really big, but the ones that we have here in our tide pools are usually about this big. They're kind of long, kind of more of an orangey color. The ones we see here, there's different types of sea stars. So this is one type, but the ones that we usually find here, we call them warty sea cucumbers, and they're kind of an orangey color, and they have spines just like this one looks like a spine. But the sea cucumber likes to play with them. So this one looks like if you were to touch it, it might be pretty spiky. Now I wonder if we have a picture of a warty sea cucumber. I'm going to have Stewie look for a picture. But remember what these spines look like, and then we'll see the spines on a warty sea cucumber. Those spines, they can be used to protect an animal, right? If you're looking for a snack, if you're swimming around the ocean looking for something to snack on, and then you come across this thing that has all these spines, and you kind of see it from a distance, do you think you want to take a bite of that? Excellent. So here is the warty sea cucumber, the ones that we find locally here, and you can see it has spines too. Here's a spine, here's a spine, here, all over its body. The spines might be thicker and larger than that other one, but that's what sea cucumbers sometimes look like. Now, if you see this and you're looking for a snack, you probably don't want to take a bite of it because your first instinct is, if that thing has spines and I take a bite, I'm going to get a mouthful of those spiky things. But the sea cucumber has a secret. I had mentioned before that these animals are all invertebrates. They have no bones in their body. And the sea cucumber, all squish. There's nothing hard in their body, including those spines. So we call them false spines. They're kind of a trickster in the ocean. They make themselves look really spiky so that no one wants to eat them. But if you would actually touch them, which they're safe to touch if you're out at a tide pool or even here at the aquarium, they are safe to touch because these spines, they're actually really soft. They're almost kind of rubbery. So they're not hurt at all. They won't poke anyone. They won't spike you like some other spiky animals in the tide pool. Sea cucumbers just have these false spines to make them look scarier than they actually are. Now, the way that the sea cucumber does stay safe, because those spines could be a good deterrent. They could keep an animal away. But if an animal is like, I know better, I know that you won't really hurt me, you're really soft and sticky. So an animal might get closer, trying to snack on the sea cucumber. The sea cucumber does something called evisceration. Now that's a big fancy word, but what it means is a sea cucumber is taking its insides, its intestines, and its stomach, and it spits it out at the animal. Heard that right. It takes its stomach and it spits it out of its mouth to scare away the predator. The animal is trying to eat it. Now the animal who's trying to eat it might either get scared or might eat their stomach instead, and the cucumber, with their suction cut feet, just like the sea star, just kind of slinks its body away. And then you might wonder, what does it do without its stomach? It can actually regrow its stomach and intestines, which sounds pretty wild. But that is what the sea cucumbers can do, and that is a way that they stay safe. So really quickly, I'm going to go back over to my drawing. I'm going to add in a sea cucumber and all those false little spines over its body. I'm going to write in that we found a sea cucumber. Excellent. So we spent today playing I Spy, exploring a tide pool, a really cool local habitat that's here in Southern California. And we spied a sea star, an anemone, and a sea cucumber. Now you can go out to the tide pool and you can spy lots of more animals and explore the animals we saw today, or you can even visit us here at the aquarium and see what other animals you can spy in the tide pools or in any of the other habitats we have here at the aquarium. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. I hope you had a great time exploring, learning about the tide pool and some of the other animals, and seeing what we can find. Hope you join us on Wednesday when we have more Aquarium Online Academy. Bye, everyone.